Hey, everybody, welcome back to Engaging the Phenomenon. And today, again, we have our special friend, Grant Cameron. Welcome back, Grant.
Thanks, James. Thanks for your interest in what I'm doing. We'll have some exciting conversation.
Yeah, for sure. So, everybody listening, Grant Cameron's a researcher. He's been researching at least since the 1970s, right? Correct?
Be 50 years as of next May.
Wow. Yeah. So,
50 years down the rabbit hole.
yeah, Grant is for sure on the deep end of the conversation. He's been in this for a long time, longer than I've been alive. And yeah, you had a very interesting transformation in your research, Grant, which maybe we can get into. But
Yeah.
for people listening, Grant has written a number of books, and he just had a new book come out called Beyond Managing Magic, Tangled in Secrets, which is book 3 of 5 in something of a 5 book series that you have, Grant. So very briefly, can you give a
Yeah.
summary of the 3 books that are out now? So start with the Area 51 book. Start with the
Okay.
first one and just a brief summary of what that book is, and then we're
Okay.
going to go into Managing Magic and how that is connected.
Okay. So it starts. Spent my career 75. I had the sightings, got down the rabbit hole, and I was trying to find someone who knew what was going on. And in the mid 1980s, for people who were around then, that's when the MJ12 leaked. I was good friends with Bill Moore. I was in that whole aviary thing. I was the person who either the first person or second person to actually put on the internet who these guys were and stuff like that. So I was following this sort of disclosure thing, and they were trying to get all this. And then we ran into Dr. Eric Walker, who was, I maintain, is the highest level source anybody's ever had in the UFO field in terms of somebody who knew what was going on. Like, some people have asked 1 or 2 questions of the president, but Walker was a very powerful guy, and I was head of a team of 8 people that were trying to get him to talk and explain what was going on. And then later I heard that Kit Green had gone to see him, and Hal Puthoff tried to talk to him and trying to get answers out of this guy. And so at the same time, the Area 51 story was breaking. So the first book is UFOs, Area 51, and Government Informants. And that is the first book ever written on Area 51. We were researching Area 51 as it was happening. I was dealing with John Lear and Knapp and all these people as this story was developing. And so the first book, Area 51 Government Informants, was put out to basically describe the Eric Walker story, what he had told us. We took all the transcripts of what this very high level guy that was in charge. He was on the board that formed DARPA, so with the Institute for Defense Analysis. So I put that book out, and it was the first book that MUFON published, and it basically told the story about the idea that there's a cover up, and that there are people who are talking, that there are people inside the government. And I think that's where I differ from a lot of people, in that I say there's people inside the government and former retired people who are trying to get this story out. So I put that book out, and then later on, as I was dealing with these high level officials, I was dealing a lot with Ron Pandolfi, and he always would talk about this idea that we've got a phenomenology problem. When he was first contacted by Dan Smith, he said, he didn't talk about UFOs. He said, we have a phenomenology problem. And that came to this whole idea that I said in book 2, where I'm going through all the people that were contacted: Bob Emenegger, Bill Moore, Tom DeLong, all these people that they've been doing this for years and years and years, leaking this material. That what they're dealing with is not UFOs, it's magic. It's this whole idea. It's all one thing. And the intelligence people and all these people realize that it's much more complex than UFOs. And then I sort of held off. And Beyond Managing Magic, the one that just come out, I wrote in 2018, but at that time was the same time that I sort of forced the Wilson Leak document out. I helped try to get this thing out on the internet, and everything exploded, and I ran for cover, and I had the alien autopsy document, and I also had the Oak Shannon notes, which I hadn't released yet. And so I ran for cover, and then I didn't put the book out, and then we did an edit, and we lost all the footnotes, and it was like, the time's not right. And then eventually, now I've said it's for history. I can sum up the whole book in a couple of minutes, and you don't have to read the book. It's just a historical thing from, say, about 1990 till the last, say, couple of years, which would be book number 4, the whole Senate thing going on now. But to sum up the book, basically, I can blame the whole thing on 3 people: Bob Bigelow, George Knapp, and Colm Kelleher. If you understand that, you understand the whole book. And what it was that Bob Bigelow is this very rich guy in Las Vegas. He had encounters with beings when he was a little boy. His father died in a plane crash. His son died very suddenly. His grandson died very suddenly, and he was obsessed with consciousness, with life after death. So he puts $3.7 million into the University of Las Vegas, Nevada, into a chair for consciousness studies to study consciousness. And of course, because he had the UFO experiences, his grandfather, his grandmother, and grandfather had this experience with the UFO. He was fascinated in that. So he starts and he forms NIDS in order to investigate this kind of stuff. And the thing was, NIDS was to look at life after death and UFOs. And so he forms this thing, and at the same time, he learns about the Skinwalker Ranch thing. So he goes and he buys this thing for cheap off this guy, $200,000 for the Skinwalker Ranch. He buys this thing because it's got all this paranormal phenomena, and he's experienced this stuff himself. So he buys this stuff, and so 1996 he buys the ranch, and then Jacques Vallée goes on there. And if you read Jacques Vallée's um,
Journal.
journals, I
Forbidden
maintain that
Science.
they didn't buy Skinwalker Ranch for UFOs, because Jacques Vallée is saying in 96 and the beginning of 97 in his journals, he's saying, what are we doing here? This is a waste of time. There's no
Yeah.
UFOs here. Like, what's it going? And it was the paranormal stuff that they were interested in. And so he buys the ranch, and you get all this stuff happening. And Bob Bigelow says it's all about messaging. This is what it is. The phenomenon is messaging, and it's playing these games. And they play these little games with the jacks, and the phenomena would move the jacks around. And he started the photographing the orbs and stuff like that. So, but in the beginning of this century, in about 2001, 2000, it all faded away, and there was nothing going on at Skinwalker Ranch. And this is where George Knapp comes in, and Colm Kelleher. So George Knapp knew the whole story of what was going on there, and they couldn't talk about it and stuff like that. So he says to Bigelow, well, there's nothing going on now. Like, maybe we can do a book. So they said, yeah, whatever. Bob Bigelow says, yeah, okay, write a book. So they write Skinwalker at the Pentagon. So Colm Kelleher, and
The
this is
Hunt for
when
the Skinwalker first.
Hunt
Yeah.
for the Skinwalker, yeah. So this is when it all explodes.
Yeah.
So it goes, and it's being seen by Lakatsky
Yeah.
and by all the guys in Iraq, and they're all reading this book around the pool and stuff like that, and they all got fascinated in this stuff. And of course, to me, I say they look at it and they go, "Wow, man! Putting the groceries back in the bag and putting the bulls inside the trailer through the metal and stuff like that. Man, we should go check this out, man. We could get some. If we could learn how to do this stuff, this would be great for U.S. intelligence, the U.S. military." So that's when Lakatsky goes to the ranch, and then they give him the signal as what they think about the U.S. intelligence, where they give him the symbol of the song, the Exorcist music off the cover, and he sees that, and then he's down the rabbit hole, and they set up the fund. They get the money through Reed, and they go there, and they do this OSAP program. And where people make the mistake, where I point out in the book, is people make the mistake because they think this is the UFO program. This is not the UFO program. This is a UFO program. Lakatsky decided, all right, well, let's do this. And they realized that there was legacy programs, that there was stuff going on behind the scenes. Well, let's get this thing going. So they do the whole OSAP thing. And then the key thing was in 2009, Senator Reed, who was one of the gang of eight, who would get the briefing, that knew that there was programs like this. What he does is he's not doing disclosure. People say, oh, they're doing disclosure. No, they weren't doing disclosure. They were doing cover up. Reed wrote the letter, and he said, we would like this into a black program, into an unacknowledged special access program, so we can get access to the material that is in the black world. And of course, the people in the black world go, that the guys with that sit up on top of have the big houses on the hill with 6 cars and a home in the Bahamas for the winter and stuff like that. They're going, what? Who are these guys? Like, what? They want us to share the money, and it's like, get lost. And that's when they kill the OSAP program. They just kill it, because you're not going. You're going up against, as Dick D'Amato said to Stephen Greer. He said, let me tell you what. He said, there's this unacknowledged special access program going on. These guys have all the money and stuff like that. Let me warn you. He said, you're up against the varsity team of all black budget programs. Be careful and good luck.
Yeah.
And this is the whole thing. So they know that there's this thing. And so when Reed writes this letter in 2009, he outs the program. and they go like, kill this damn thing. So they kill the program. They cut the money and they kill the program. And then they're left with the ATIP thing. And the ATIP thing, there really doesn't any money. And they're doing these military thing. They can't do anything at Skinwalker Ranch. You can only do the military thing. So they go along, and you have Elizondo running this program, and with really no support or whatever, and they're trying to get money. And that's when Lakatsky tells a story that they go and they give this briefing to the Homeland Security.
Yeah.
And you remember this story where they go and they scare the living daylights out of these two high-level officials, and
Yeah.
and these guys can't sleep at night. And that's the same night as the hitchhiker effect, where the little kid is being bombarded by the orbs. That happens the same night. And it's almost like this idea where I say the phenomena is all connected. This hitchhiker thing, it's like it happens in ghosts. It happens all over the place. It's all connected. So when they scare the living daylights out of these Homeland Security guys trying to get money, because they want to, you got to create fear. You got to create, otherwise you're going to get any money. And they're trying to get money for ATIP. They're trying to keep this program going. And the same night at Skinwalker Ranch, they call Colm Kelleher into the ranch, and they say something's going on at the homestead, this second homestead, and they have this experience the same night. And then they try to get the money, and that's when this Conan Blue thing starts, where they run that. And again, it's the same thing. They want to get in on the black budget program. They want to get the research money that's being in the black ops, and the black ops guys say, get the hell out of here, shut this program down. And so it doesn't get off the ground. And that's the bottom line of this whole thing. So people have this assumption that there's this, the OSAP was this main program. It wasn't. It was a program basically that wrote 105 papers or whatever that have never been released or whatever, but they outed themselves by allowing the black ops to know. And the point is that when you go and knock on the door of the black ops and say, we'd like your money and your research, and we want to share it, they go, get out of here. You have no need to know. And they kill these programs. So there is a program going in behind the scenes, and I maintain that it's legal. I absolutely maintain this has always been legal, and that people like Tim Burchett, who's whining and crying and complaining and stuff like that, these people don't realize how the government works. Burchett has to realize you're the Illuminati, you're the government. How does the government? I hate to be the Canadian, big mouth Canadian who tells Americans how the government works, but you have the president who writes executive orders, who really doesn't do law. The law is written by the Congress. It's written by people like Tim Burchett. So he writes this two-page bill, but the whole thing was that in this recent thing, the reason that the Schumer amendment was killed is because Burchett's friend Turner and Rogers decided, we're going to kill this program. We're not going to let it through. And all you have to do, and I say, if there had been 6 more Democrats elected to the House in 2022, we would have UFO disclosure today. The only thing that stopped it was that Turner could kill the bill, and then they went to those 2 Mikes. So then they go to Mike Johnson and they say, "Oh, let's take it to Mike. We need a party line vote to kill this thing. Let's go to Mike. Mikey, you know the commercial. Mikey, he hates everything." And then Mike looks at it and says, "Yeah, let's kill the bill." And so they kill the bill, and then what do? They write this watered down bill from the Schumer Rounds amendment, and what does it say? It says it sets the law. So these guys have set the law. It says you do not have to hand over the material. It says you do not have to be subpoenaed. You do not have to give up the ultimate files that you have. You don't have to tell us what's going on. That's the law. So get used to the law. And if you don't like the law, if you're whining and complaining that the Illuminati is covering it up, you realize that you can, anytime Burchett and his buddies can write a bill and they can vote on it and pass it, because it's going to pass the Senate, because the Senate Intelligence Committee, it was 18-0 for the vote. There's no opposition in the Senate. So you can pass the bill and it will become law. And if you put in the law that says you have to hand everything over, you have to tell us what's going on, because that was the deal. They had this 6-year program from 24 to 2030, and that happened already when Hillary Clinton lost the election. At that time, I was listening to before Tom DeLonge went public, I was dealing with Chris Bledsoe, who knew what was going on. And he was telling me this. High-level officials are going to come forward. They're going to say UFOs exist, and they're going to force disclosure. And he told me 2017 to 2025, I think it was the same program. And they were going to run it, and it got killed then, and it got killed now. So anytime that Burchett and all these guys want disclosure, they can pass the bill, and they can get it through. And if they can't, then they have to admit, yes, we can't pass the bill and there's nothing we can do about it. But it's very simple. It's law. The law is written by the Congress. There is no Illuminati. People like Pandolfi and people like that would love you to believe there's an Illuminati that's running this thing, because you're going to spend the rest of your life down some dark
What?
alley in France or Mexico City, and you're never going to find it. They love you to chase the Illuminati because you don't realize it's the government. The government can change the law, and Burchett and his buddies are the Illuminati. They are the government. They can change it anytime they want.
Yeah, and I think one of the reasons that the UFO legacy programs are called legacy programs is because some of the old national security acts and the ones that followed that are the ones that have basically have the guidelines saying, if it comes to national security, you're allowed to
Yeah,
keep things on a need to know basis. You don't
exactly. But the
have
thing is,
to.
who wrote those laws? It was written by Congress.
Yeah,
Congress wrote those laws, and that's the ultimate. Going back to the Eisenhower lecture, his last speech: "Beware the military-industrial congressional complex." And they took out the word congressional as to not offend Congress. But that's what he said: beware, this is taking over. So you have a $900 billion defense budget. These guys are not going to shut it down and go get honest jobs. There's no way. They've got the money, they got the power, and they're not giving it up. And it's legal.
so
It's always been legal.
why would people like Ron Pandolfi want us to run in circles?
Well, he called it obfuscation one time. He said, I'm here to do obfuscation, just to keep people off balance, to so people are running around in circles." And he realizes, and I realize this now, that the UFO community has become almost like very cultish. I mean, they're jumping on conspiracy theories and stuff like this. And basically he calls everybody loons, crooks, and worse. Like, these people are a
Yeah,
bunch of loons, and we can run these people around in circles anytime we want. And I won't get into it, but there's even in the last couple of days, there's been an incident where uh, somebody contacted him, and he came back with this thing, and he just flips the story around because you can never nail him. I was the only guy that ever caught him on film. The one time when he was on the cruise ship, when he
right.
talked about going into the other world and coming back, this idea of the portals thing. But other than that, he's never been
But
put on
but
record, so
do
he doesn't
do,
really care.
do you think that even the whole thing about the portals is an obfuscation too?
No, 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 because I was frustrated, and I never talked to, the odd time I'll have a back and forth with Ron, but really not, because I realize it's like talking to UFO people. It's kind of a waste of time. So, but I listen to people around him, so I know everybody that sort of knows him. If you're talking to him, okay, what's he saying to you? And I listen to all these people, and I just sort of sit on the background. And there was one particular person who was very close to Ron, and very close to both the family and the child and everything like that. And I said to him, I said, "Yeah, I'm getting tired of this. I can't. I'm gonna drop this thing. This is just driving me nuts. I'm not getting anywhere with this thing." And then I said, all I was interested was the portal thing. And I said, "So do you think I should take off, or do you think I should stick around?" He goes, and then there's this pause. He goes, "Yeah, you should probably stick around." I go, "Oh, okay." So I say, "Okay, I'll put up with this portal nonsense for another couple of years or whatever." And then it was like years later, I was now talking about UFOs, and I talked to this guy, and then I said, he said, "You know that question you asked me a couple of years ago?" And I said, "Oh yeah, it's real." I go, "Really? It's real?" It's like, wow. It's like, so there is this aspect, and that's you and I, because you're an experiencer, so you know this thing. It's not the nuts and bolts that people think it is. It's this much more complex thing, and that's where I think this idea is. People think you're going to get this craft, and you're going to pull it apart, and it's this idea that it's this thing that it may not be as physical as people think it is, and they're popping in and they're popping out, and they're, or the one being that told me, "We've always been here. You're the visitor. You want us to be ETs? We can be ETs if you want us to be ETs," and this sort of thing. And it's so much more complex and so much more etheric. Even the lecture, I'm giving this lecture on this cruise, going to Alaska, to Seattle in September, and I'm going through this whole thing, and I'm starting to do what interests me is this, is looking at the phenomena itself. And I actually went to people around Area 51, the Lazar thing, because you remember the Lazar, they had the 9 crafts, and I said,
Yeah.
"Hey, were the crafts different? Are they all different?" Because you remember the interview, that the most important interview I think has been done in the last couple of years was George Knapp and Corbell doing this interview with Lakatsky. When Lakatsky
Right. Yeah.
said,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
when
Yeah.
he says, "What have we discovered?" And here's the guy that ran the program. He said, "When we discovered," he says, "like driving down the LA freeway, and every single car is different." And then I went back and I had written the book, UFO Sky Pilots, on the 36 people plus that had claimed they flew the craft, and went back and looked, and sure enough, it's like a dream. There's a phenomena going on. These people are on a craft. They touch the craft. They become one with the craft, and whatever they think is where they can go. They go instantaneously anywhere in the galaxy and stuff like that. They're all telling the same story. But when I looked, everybody touched something different. One touched the ball, one touched the panel, one touched a little stick, one put their fingers on the end of a chair. And I'm going, how's this possible that 36 people are all telling something different? And I started to realize, like, and I started thinking, like, I said to George, I asked George, he didn't answer. I said, George, you ever got anybody else who's got 115, the story of 115? And you start looking, and it's like maybe all the propulsion systems are different. There are no two propulsion systems, and it's this mind thing that we're creating this sort of stuff, and it just gets more and more complex. Because and I mentioned to you before we started, I'm going to do on the ship. I'm going to take all the grays. I'm going to put them one after another, and a lot of grays. One just get boom, 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 boom. And if you think these look the same, they're completely different. Or if you go before 1961, when the grays appeared, you start looking, and they're wearing overalls. They're wearing bubble helmets like the 1930s, 40s science fiction thing. They're human beings with suits on,
Yeah.
or they're, and you realize that the phenomenon is changing. It's morphing, it's morphing, it's morphing, and it's never the same thing. The cattle mutilations have stopped. The crop circles have stopped. They started at one point. The cattle mutilations started at one point, and you see it does this, and it does this, and the phenomena does this, and then it does this. Okay, let's change it. Now let's bring in the people speaking light language. And if you look at all the alien language, it all sort of looks the same, but I've got a number of people with the alien language. It's all different. And that's where you start looking at what's really going on here.
So when remember during that interview with George Knapp, Jeremy Corbell, and Jim Lukatsky, that Jim Lukatsky made a comment about human potential.
Yeah, which was what Rockefeller was interested in. That was Rockefeller's main key.
So,
and
yeah.
But that wasn't the things I saw most significant. Is he said, we've discovered that the phenomena is a combination of physical and psychic elements, and that's exactly what UFO Sky Pilots is. There's this physical element. You can come in. We're sort of here. That world is just as real as this world, and you go there, and it's a psychic component. And everybody that's an experiencer will know there's this psychic element to it. And the other thing that he said that confirms this weirdness of it, he said, we've confirmed that there's men in black. And that's when Corbell says, what do you mean? I mean, like government? No. That. But the way they're doing it, he said they're using it opposite. They're dragging you into the phenomena with the black helicopters and the men in black and all this kind of stuff. They're dragging you in, which is my theory of wow. What's the phenomena doing? It's not doing anything. It's just making you go, what the hell's going on here? And you start to realize the world is not the way you think it is. And it's the whole idea where Gary Nolan says, I'm interested not in the 95% that fall within the bell curve. I'm interested in the 5% that fall outside the bell curve. It's the paranormal phenomena that tell you that there's something in your belief systems that's not right. And if you can figure it out, you win a Nobel Prize. And so that's what I think this whole thing's about. And Lukatsky was hinting this kind of stuff, even where he talked about the fact that in 2011, he said, I was with a senator, and nobody picks up on this. I go, why are people not picking this up? He had a senator when he said we got inside the craft, which means that the senator was probably Reed. And it means that there are senators who know what's going on, which confirms my suspicion that it's all legal. I say to people, where did they get the crafts from? Where did Lockheed? And they say, well, they had recovery teams. So I said, come on, give your head a shake. Go back to the original Roswell thing. What happened with the Nitinol story? The Nitinol story of the reports from 48 and 49. They got report 2, report 3 about the fact that they went to Battelle with the memory metals from the Roswell crash, and Battelle was working on it. Because if you're a U.S. senator, or if you're whatever, you know nothing about metals, you know nothing about crafts, so you contract it out. I worked for the government. I worked for the university for years and years and years, and I know that's how the game's played. You contract it out because you haven't got the expertise. So you give the crafts to the Lockheed and all these different people, and you even hear Elizondo talk about this. Is one of the reasons that they're going to have a hard time revealing this, is because you give it to Lockheed, but you don't give it to Boeing. And now Boeing is going to sue because you gave them crafts and you didn't give these guys crafts. The crafts were given to them. This is all legal. It was handed out to them. And now we got this sort of idea that this is illegal, these contractors, if you look at Lockheed, they give money to everybody. And if you're building the F-35, I always point out to people, take a look at the F-35 jet fighter. It's made in 47 different states. Why is it made in 47 different states? Because you've got every single congressman and senator in the bag. They've got jobs, they've got money coming from Lockheed, and you're not going to vote if there's suddenly a cost overrun on the F-35. Nobody's going to vote against it. Nobody's going to shut it down because you're all compromised. That's what Ike said. Beware the military industrial complex. Once you get this thing going, you cannot shut it down. It just gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and you can't shut it down.
So, and why do you think that, the phenomenon itself could just disclose everything tomorrow, today, and say, hey, we're here, this is what we're doing here? Why do you think that the phenomenon itself is elusive?
Because it all comes down to the fact that the way we do it is we go into another country and we say, we're here to bring you freedom, democracy, Jesus, and McDonald's. And then they point guns and say, get the hell out of our country. Who the hell do you think you are? And we do it the left brain thing. We're going to give you a lecture. We're going to come down and give you a left brain lecture. They're right brain. So what they're doing is they're forcing you to figure it out. And the way science works is by awe and curiosity. Unless you're got awe and curiosity, you're not going to put any money into research. You're not going to try to figure anything because you got it all figured out. It's the paranormal phenomena that go, what is going on here? And then you see why, and you start doing experiments. Why is this happening? How could this possibly be true if these people are telling the truth? And that's what leads you to discoveries. That's what leads to Nobel Prizes, is awe and curiosity. It's the same. I found an example of the theologian Martin Luther. Martin Luther was in a seance thing. They got Martin Luther in a seance and they asked him the same question, except instead of talking about aliens, they said, why doesn't God get off his fat rear end and come down and tell us what's going on? And he said, because doubt is part of the part of the equation. If your soul were suddenly to realize what's going on, it would develop wings and fly away. And that's the whole thing. You got to stay in this thing. And so it's this awe and curiosity. It's us figuring it out. Because before, if you get into the paranormal stuff, I do most of my stuff in paranormal, is before you come in, you know everything. And you go through the river of forgetfulness to forget. So if you come in and suddenly you demand the answers, I want the answers to the questions, that's not how it works. It's bring you in and you're going through these experiences where people are learning and they're developing and it's getting more developed. Because if you look at the free survey, was done by Ray Hernandez and Edgar Mitchell. It said 40% of all experiencers at one point during their experience knew the answer to everything in the universe. And if you look at near-death experiences, you'll see 31% of people who have had near-death experiences say at one point during their experience they knew the answer to everything in the universe. If you look at shared near-death experiences, you look at Cook, who wrote Hunt for the Zero Point Energy, the Zero Point book. His wife has this shared death experience with her mother when she dies, and she says to him, I was in this place that had no time and I knew the answer to everything and I couldn't bring it back with me. I've had that experience of knowing the answer to everything in the universe. So if you're on a ship and the intelligence, whatever this intelligence is, gives you access to everything in the universe, they have the answers to everything in the universe. They're not here to figure out our DNA. They're not here to grab plants and figure out how it works. They know the answer to everything. And that's this whole idea, is that you're supposed to not know stuff. Otherwise, you're not going to do anything. It's awe and curiosity that moves science down the road.
So, again, with the phenomenon, what do you think we're dealing with here, right? You said, maybe they know everything. You think we're dealing with another advanced sentient intelligence similar to ourselves? Do you think we're dealing with something? I mean, how do you even begin to try to describe what potentially, because seemingly this intelligence is operating on a different level that we can't even comprehend its traces, right? We can't even comprehend what it leaves behind, let alone the origin source of it. So how do you reconcile, we're trying to discover what this is and what it means, and we don't even have the first clue of where we're going.
But we know more than we did before. This is this whole idea that
Right.
it's a process of development. And the more I look at it, when I had the first sighting in 1975, I looked at this thing and I went, oh, it was almost like they wanted me to have no doubt whatsoever as to what I was looking at.
Right.
So
Same
that
with
was
me.
pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so then I saw it the second night, came right at me and then flew away. And then I'm thinking, what is this? So I remember I was flying away the second night and I'm watching this thing fly away from me and I'm going, geez, that's extraterrestrial. That's so cool. The more I go after 50 years, the less I believe this is extraterrestrial. The
Right.
more I think it's way more complex than that. And I guess you go back to Shakespeare. All the world's a stage. All the men and women are but actors. They have their entrances and exits, and each man plays many roles. You believe that you're James. You're not. You're playing James the puppet on the stage. You are actually, it's the idea that you are a spiritual being, have a physical dream, and you're having this sort of idea. And as the more you look at the paranormal phenomenon, the more you realize that's probably what's going on. That it's this very complex thing. There is no, it's like there is no, maybe no physical world. It's this idea that we may be in a simulation, and we're the guys that are creating the simulation. And so we believe in what science has done is it's changed the whole thing is a verb. It's the Tao Te Ching,
Yeah.
the thing. The name that can be named is not the Tao. The eternal name that can be is not the eternal name. The Tao is the creator of the beginning of heaven and earth. The Tao is the mother of 10,000 things. What we have is it's a verb. It's all alive. It's all conscious. And what we do in science is what you want to do is break it down to little pieces. So you make it into a noun. There's this noun, there's big this and this noun, and then we work by perception. So we have perceptions of what we think we're seeing, and we say the world is flat because it looks flat. We are not moving. We're not. The Earth is not spinning because it doesn't appear we're spinning. The sun is going around the Earth because it looks that way. And the more you go, the more you realize that everything you perceive is going to be end up being wrong. That you're making assumptions based upon nouns. That there's this separation. There's them out there. And so when I start looking at the UFO phenomena, as I said, Lakatsky said all sightings are different. There's even the key one that they talk about at Skinwalker Ranch. You remember the one that Colm Keller talked about? There's six of them. They got the Gen 3 glasses. They're
Yeah.
sitting there,
Yeah.
and the thing comes flying over the ridge, and they all look with their Gen 3 glasses. And these are what scientists or whoever they are, or whatever, high level guys, and they watch it, and in the end of the night, they compare notes, and everybody saw something different. And that's this whole idea. And I even get into the aliens, like the grays, or I started looking at, is this a biological being? So if you go back to David Jacobs, he writes a whole chapter in one of his books about this. And I've always had this thought too. It's like, is this really a biological being? Like, how can it go through a wall if it's a biological being? And he has the whole thing where he says when he remember they do the mind scan where the alien looks this far away and they look into the eyes and they can read your mind or whatever. And they're doing a mind scan. And then he always asks the question. He says, whenever they do that, he asks the question, is he breathing? And they go, no, he's not breathing. And it's like, so if he's not breathing, like, is this actually a biological being? And then you realize it doesn't have it doesn't have a mouth, it just has a slit, doesn't have any ears, it doesn't have any wrinkles, it looks like its skin is rubbery, and all this kind of stuff. And you start realizing, like, hey, people when they're on board the ship, they always say, oh, I was on board the ship, and people will say, were you probed, were you scared? I always ask them, hey, when you're on the ship, did the alien have any clothes on? And they go, no. You don't think it was kind of weird? They didn't have any clothes on? I go, yeah, that's kind of weird. And I say, did they have any belly button nipples? Did they have any sex organs? And they go, never thought about that. No, I don't think they had any sex organs. And I go, you don't think that's kind of weird? If it's a biological being, like, why doesn't it have sex organs? And the more
Yeah.
you look at it, the less it looks like an alien. The more it
Yeah.
looks like it's projecting to be an alien.
Well, so here's the thing, right? It's projecting to be an alien, right? And I really like how Dr. Gary Nolan kind of theorized this in a I think maybe he was talking to Tucker Carlson or something. But you still at the end of the day there's some kind of, again, what technology, right? If it's an avatar, it's manifested somehow, right? So there is some kind of technological component.
But again, you're making it a noun. You're saying there's component, there's technology. These are nouns,
Okay,
noun,
okay.
all verb. It's all elusive. It's like you interviewed Jim Semivan. When Jim Semivan said,
Right,
there
right, right.
does not
Well,
appear to be any there. What the hell is he talking
so
about?
this
And
is
he got the briefing. He knows where the legacy programs are. What does he mean? There does not appear to be any there. This seems to be on the edge of consciousness and quantum physics. And I don't think in my lifetime I'll ever understand what this is. So if he's got the briefing and he says, in my lifetime, I'm never going to figure out what it is, we shouldn't be guessing as to, it's this or that. It's almost like the alien said to me, do you want us to? I said, are you an extraterrestrial? Would you like us to be an extraterrestrial? We could do that if you want. We could
so
take you to our planet, but no, we're not extraterrestrials.
what do you make? Because again, right, the talk with Jim Semivan, like I probably watched that interview more than any of my other interviews. Um,
And
what do
he's
you?
key because he's the guy. He knows. He's That's why I spent my whole life looking at people who may know. Jim Semivan may know a hell of a lot more than you and I. And so when he says something like that, you got to say, "What's he really talking about here?"
Well, and here's the thing, right? Because he's saying that, right? But then you have a number of talks and comments and even books by Tom DeLonge, and it's like there's all this different messaging, right? There's because in the different talks that Tom DeLonge does in the books, and again, they're Tom DeLonge and Jim Semivan are both with To the Stars. It seems like Tom's talking all about consciousness and one thing, and then there's another thing where he's talking about, yeah, these look like again, like avatars, like artificial uh synthetic life forms, right? And so there's like different conversational threads going on, and it doesn't all completely add up, right? There's still like these missing
Yeah.
components, and
So
he even hints at that as well.
yeah, they can make it they can make physical stuff. It's like the example I can give you is the guy that started Stanford University. His son died, and they were doing seances and stuff like that. And his brother was into seances. He was in Australia, and they were doing seances and stuff. And in one of them, they made a turtle appear. This turtle just appeared out of nowhere, and this guy kept this turtle his entire life. And then when the turtle died, the shell is at Stanford University in the Apport collection. So yeah, they can make physical stuff appear. But what did Jim Semivan say? Because we've got bodies and crafts doesn't mean we know what it is. We're
Right.
just making this assumption. Yeah, you've got hardware, but they can make anything appear. In seances, this stuff's appearing, or like the metals. So people get all excited about the metals. Oh, there's those layered pieces of metal on. Even now, talking about the Canadian piece from 1950 was layered as well. And the whole thing is, what are they doing? So people say, well, they came across the galaxy, and then little pieces started falling off. It's like, give your head a shake. Come on, use your head. I mean, they're dropping this stuff on purpose, and no two pieces are the same. Even the one with the Ubatuba piece that Nolan had, he had one
Yeah.
piece for the same crash, two different pieces, and they were two different things. One had the isotopes all messed up, and the other one didn't. And
Yeah.
that's where I say the phenomena is doing this weird stuff. It's just making you think. It's making you go, what? The world can't be the way it is. And the more you think the world can't, there's something in the world that I need to discover, the more we progress. As long as we think we got it all figured out, and all this kind of stuff. Or you take the crafts. I mean, people who think, oh, we've got this stuff, we've got this back technology, whatever. And then um, Sheehan tells a story about briefing the guy for Senate intelligence. The guy talks about the craft being inside, not bigger on the inside. And I've got lots of these stories.
Right.
Chris Bledsoe tells a story, it's the size of a football field inside. And even on the ground, according to Sheehan, the one that was on the ground, the craft was bigger on the inside and outside. I mean, there's no way. You start looking at this, you realize the world is not the way we think it is. And that's what the phenomenon is trying to do, is trying to get us to not to look at things, to believe what you see, is to understand that they're what you're seeing is much more complex than what you think you see.
Do you have a suspicion to why they're trying to do that?
Well, it's all a game. All the world's a stage, all the men and women, and we are actors coming on stage. And I'm not Grant. I pretended to be Grant. And what did Whitley Strieber's wife said when he got this message after she died? She said, "Whitley, I am no longer Anne, but I'll always be Anne to you." And she's moved on to another game. And so you're playing this game of developing this kind of stuff, and there is no sort of end. There's no beginning, and the world just gets much more complex. And it's why would you even come into the world? And that's the question I guess you got to ask yourself, is if the reincarnation is a fact, and if I came in here, did I come in here just randomly, just oh yeah, or did I actually agree to do something? And you'll have the experiences. I'll ask them, hey, you had this thing, you think you're on a mission? And people go, yeah, I think so. I don't know what it is, but I think I'm on a mission. And they believe that this is happening not by accident, that they are part of this thing, or that this family is theirs. I'm not from here, I'm from there. John Denver, believe he's from the constellation Lyra. People have all these different ideas, and there's just these little glimpses. And what this phenomenon, but the phenomenon is us. We're part of the phenomena. We're the stage players. So I even go as far as to say, to me now, and I was raised, I was supposed to be a minister, I now say the world was not created by God. God did not create the heavens and earth and then put the spirit inside the body. God created the sparks of the divine, and we're the ones that are creating the heavens and the earth with thought. It's all being built. It's all made out of consciousness. Consciousness is primary, not physical matter. So consciousness creates the matter, and we've got it all backwards. And that's the things that the more we go along, the more we learn. We've got this wrong. We got this wrong. We got this wrong. And once you get it right, then you're going to make a discovery. But as long as you still believe that the sun goes around the earth and that things are solid and stuff like that, you're not going to make any progress, because you're based on false beliefs. And that's all they're doing, is they're giving us these little clues. Like, it's like the whole idea, like, why would aliens come across the galaxy and then do triangles in the sky? And you've seen these videos of them forming triangles and these objects. What's that all about? Why you put triangles on people's arms? They're just doing these weird things that are trying to wake us up. They're trying to get us to realize it's not the world you thought it was. And if you even go to Mark Sims, I don't know if you ever interviewed him. He had this experience with Stephen Greer where he has this encounter, and then he has an encounter with the being for 13 days. And what they give him is exactly what Michael Newton said, which is one of my big discoveries, is Michael Newton, this whole idea that we progress and we go through these reincarnations and stuff like that, and the world gets more complex and more developed and stuff like that, and smarter. And he talked about this thing that starts very, very low level stuff, and then at the end at level 15 you have souls that are actually creating galaxies. And that's what it's about. We're just building this thing, and it's getting bigger and more complex. We're having this sort of game, and it's got to have its ups and downs, because we have God come into the theater with the popcorn, and it's like, oh, I love you, James. I love you. I love my kid. I love this. I love that. And they go, oh God, get out of here. This is useless. Go to the next one where there's Star Wars and people
Yeah.
are going. And that's the thing. So why would aliens come across the galaxy and then fly around with lights? Because, as I said, it's the theory of wow. It's like you want to wake these people up. So you have this little game being played, and the grade 1 class says, well, let's go in there with lights on crafts. We don't have lights on our crafts. Why do they have lights? They have lights so you can see them. They want you to see them. They want you to go, what was that thing I saw in 1975? It flew right in front of the car. I can't believe it. And it drags you. You can't. And you know what it's like. Once you get down the rabbit hole, you cannot get out of the rabbit hole. You know exactly what the sighting was. You can't get it out of your mind. It drives you, and that pushes everything along. And then they'll say, hey, this grade 2 class says, hey, let's mutilate some cattle, all downwind and downstream from nuclear power activities, to give them the idea that they shouldn't be doing nuclear weapons. So suddenly all these cattle mutilations start on the western plains, on the east side of the Rockies and stuff like that. And then the other one says, let's do crop circles. Like, why are they doing crop circles? Why don't they just come down and tell you what's going on? Because they do it's a right brain phenomenon. It's not a lecture phenomenon, a word phenomenon. It's symbols. It's like dreams. It's so they put these symbols, and people are trying to, what is it? And it may be a hoax. This crop circle's a hoax or whatever. But man, how the hell did they
Yeah.
build it? And that's what you're doing. You're getting people. They're all running, stepping on each other, trying to figure out what's going on. And it's just this weird type phenomena that they're doing, that's just driving you to awe and curiosity, to do research, to realize the world is not the way you thought it was.
So what do you think happens, right? It's like you have this whole conversation of disclosure versus confirmation. What happens if we get confirmation? Now, then what?
Well, it's again, we go back to, you got to listen to people who actually know what's going on. And that was Walker, and this is 35 years ago already. We had this conversation with him, and at that time I didn't know what it was. And he said, number one, he said, why should we change the rules and regulations to satisfy your curiosity? And I went, rules and regulations? That's the first time I got the indication this could be legal, that there
Right.
are rules and regulations. And I've got the thing. And he said, you're never going to get the answer. Go study something else. You're never going to be told. So not number one, they say they're never going to do it. And if you've got the money, and power, like as I said, are you going to shut down a $900 billion defense budget and say, everybody's love and peace, and we should all work together as one? This message of oneness and love, or are you going to keep the money? The game is, you've got the money. You're not going to give that up. And the second thing Walker said, and he said it in his first interview to Steinman in 1987. Steinman's all upset. Like, what do you mean? This is the most important thing in the world. He said, calm down, calm down. And he said, so when you figure this thing out, what are you going to do with it? And that's the whole thing, is the dog chasing the car. What happens when the dog actually catches the car? So if we get confirmation, what happened in 2017? Everybody said, oh, no, there's no UFO program. Mellon said in 2016, he was on Coast to Coast with me, and he said, no, there's no program. No, 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 I would know. I mean,
Right. I
there's no.
remember. Yeah.
And then in 2017, suddenly Tom DeLonge that comes forward, and then the New York Times does the article, and it was like that's cast. They're playing this whole catastrophic disclosure thing. Oh, what happens if it all just explodes and stuff like that? And what happened? 2017 was catastrophic disclosure. It's like New York Times front page. Government is working on UFOs. And everybody goes, yeah, I knew that, right? I wrote an article in 2017. I took the Stephen Greer stuff at 2009. 64 reasons why the government's not going to tell you the truth. And I said, the stock market will melt down, oil will be worth nothing, people are going to jump off bridges. Nothing happened. It's like, and so that's what's going on is that we're just sort of chasing the phenomena. And in the end, if you catch the car, so what? And I tell people, so what? They know. There's high level black budget program people who know. What does that change? And that's what said to Walker. I asked people, like, what are you going to do when you get disclosure? People say, I'll know who I am. Well, they're not going to give up all this money and this ability to build technology, because that's what it's about for them. They're building technology. They can get in. If you go to Skinwalker Ranch, it's the whole thing. They put the groceries back in the bag. The woman goes in, puts the groceries in there, and goes to the next room, comes back, and the groceries are back in the bag. How do you put a bull? That's the slide 9. That's the briefing slide that they use to scare the living daylights out of the senators and the congressmen. Is this thing, stuff going through metal, disassembly of equipment. That's when they rip the cables down from the one camera is looking at the other camera. And it's this whole thing is we're going to try to figure out this technology, and the phenomena is doing all this kind of stuff, and it has this ability. And so they know, the government knows. There is not the government, because I always say to people, what's the government? I was brought in, that story. I was brought in when Trump was brought in, and one of his big backers, they said, we got to do a briefing. Got to do a briefing for Trump. And they said, where are the crafts and the bodies? I said, what do you mean, where are the crafts and the bodies? And I said, well, who's they? He said, well, the government. I said, what do you mean the government? He said, well, they're not going to tell them. I said, who's the government? And he's the CIA director and stuff. Hey, if Trump gets in, and now Trump is talking about he's going to replace all the government people with MAGA people. I mean, this the idea. I said to him, if he appoints the CIA director, and he appoints the NSA director, and he appoints the head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and he appoints all these people, they're his people. And if they stab him in the back and don't tell him, whose fault is that? I said, the president runs the show. So you can't have, there's somebody telling the president what to do. Baloney. The president can fire anybody. And Jimmy Carter proved that. He fired. I talked to the one woman. She was so scared. She was a big shot at the Carter Library. And she was said they were scared. They were, because he didn't like smoking. He didn't like drinking. And they'd be across the street having lunch, and they'd be hiding in the back, because if they got caught smoking, they'd get fired and stuff like that. People don't realize that. So the president can fire anybody. He can start firing people the same as the House people can write a bill and they can pass it, and there's nothing anybody can do about it. Because if there had been 6 more Democrats in the House, they would have had the majority, and it would have gone through, and Turner would have said, I'm going to cut it. And they would say, shut up and go away. You have no power. The only reason he could do it was because he was the head of the intelligence in the House. That's the government. So people have this thing about, the government's doing that. It doesn't matter who knows. It's how you're in this world for what you're here to learn. I'm here, and whatever happens, happens. So if they know, they don't know, it really doesn't matter to you and I. It's what are you and I? What is our role in this thing? What are we supposed to be doing?
Yeah, I want to shift the conversation a little, because there's some questions I had that I wanted to get your thoughts on, because I know you've been in the research field so long, you've heard it all, you've seen it all, you've researched it all, and these are concerns that come up, and this is one that has come up recently, and and always does from time to time, and that is the issue of targeted individuals, right? So people that are targeted by United States intelligence services, I'll use that terminology, in regards to the UFO subject, right? So you have whistleblower retaliation as one kind of thing, but you also have experiencers who are having interactions with the phenomenon, that then intelligence services are interacting with them, trying to learn from them, or even there's a whole issue of my labs, right? The military staged abductions.
What does Semi-Van say about my labs?
Okay, go there. Tell me what you said.
Well, he said he didn't believe. I mean, he had the experience. He had the beings in his room, and he said he didn't believe that they could run this thing. The amount of technology and facilities and money that they would need, that he just thought he would have seen it. He would have seen this Millab thing. And that's where you go to the Lukatsky thing, is what's really going on. He said, we have men in black. And he said, no, not the government. No, not the government, them. And so I remember I was with, I've rarely told the story. I was with, I was going to write a book on the presidents with Angela Joyner, and I was at her place.
Oh
I was there for
wow.
about 2
Yeah.
weeks, and we never got anything. And I said, we're not getting anywhere with this thing. So I just sort of shut it down. But we were there, and all of a sudden, her husband came home from work, and he said, "Hey, there's UFO outside." We go running outside. Sure enough, it's daytime, and this I can't remember what it looked like. It didn't look like anything. It just was kind of weird. I'm looking at this thing. It's like, what the hell is that? And it's going along, and all of a sudden, like it flies us heading towards Dallas. And then we're sitting there, and all of a sudden, first jet comes through. The second jet comes through after it, and it's the whole idea: is this the government? Is this the government actually doing this, or is this the phenomena doing this? They're
Right.
dragging you into the phenomena. They're making you go, "What is going on?" How could you possibly know the morning after that you had an experience? And we give the government all this power. Oh, they know what's going on. Yeah, they're watching. That's what Ron Pendolfi, I believe he said. There was this quote: because we cannot control the phenomena, we watch those that the phenomena influences. Lights in the sky have limited scientific information, and that's the whole thing. So that's what Bledsoe asked Tim Taylor. He said, "Hey Tim," he says, "what are you doing on my property? All you military guys and intelligence guys, you're scaring the living daylights out of my family. My kids are being oppressed in school and stuff like that. Like, what are you doing on my property?" He said, "Well," he said, "Chris," he said, it appears they like you, Chris. You're in contact with them. They don't like us, Chris. They don't talk to us. So we're here to find out what you know." And that's true. So and same as Semivan said, he couldn't talk to Chris Bledsoe until he got out in 2008, and then he went to see Chris because he's an experiencer too. And that's the whole thing. So yeah, people are being watched, but the whole thing about the whistleblowers, that's another real bad flag that people got to start giving their heads a shake. If you have some guy comes to you, I had the one of Pendolfi's people came to me. This is a number of years ago to make an offer. Oh, U.S. intelligence said I should talk to you. And I said, really? U.S. intelligence said to talk to me. I'm a Canadian. Why would U.S. intelligence say to talk to me? What are you going to give this? So when you get a whistleblower, when a whistleblower comes to you and says, I'm going to violate my national security oath, spend 25 or 50 years in jail, and I've picked you, James, to come and tell, you got to say, why are you not in jail?
Right.
It's high level security. So when someone comes to you and says, I'm a whistleblower and I'm going to tell you what's going on, I'm going to violate my national security, you better get ready to duck, because this doesn't make any sense. If you get people, that one girl in Georgia, it was 1 page of a document, she got 5 years in jail. I mean, this is serious stuff, and people can't violate their security clearances. And people think, oh, because I'm an American citizen, I pay for this sort of stuff. That's the Snowden defense. I'm an American citizen, so I'm working in intelligence here, and I don't like what's going on. So I'm going to take all this intelligence material because I'm an American citizen, and I'm going to put it on WikiLeaks and give it to the
Well,
Russian.
so
And
I mean, say somebody like Dr. Stephen Greer, he released a ton of documents where I was like, wow, that's like, he, allegedly some of the documents, like one document was released to him by an insider he had from the NSA, another one from the NRO, and he put out all these documents, right?
yeah, but the question is, why are these guys not in jail? And are the documents real? So the way it works, and that they say that a big, high-level black budget program, there's more spent on security than there is on the program.
Yeah, about 8
So
times they
there's all
said,
this
yeah.
security, and the way I say that they move it is the loons, crooks, and worst. That the UFO community is sitting there every day waiting for the disclosure. So the next video that comes out, everybody jumps on it, and they try to tweet it, and they try to get clicks on their programs and stuff like that, and they run it, and then someone comes and says, "Oh, we discovered that's a hoax," and it was, "Oh," and then they go on and wait for the next one. And everybody's waiting for the next story. They're waiting. They think that there's a puzzle and there's only one piece that's missing. And we get that one piece, we're going to figure out the whole thing. And so we fall into these hoax things all the time, over and over and over again. And we're always chasing the story. And if you have a whistleblower, I'm always going to be very suspicious of whistleblowers, because the way I believe that they do it. And as I said, this will be the 5th book that I mentioned to you, because they're doing it again. And I was part of one of the initiatives. There's a number of initiatives. They're going to do it again. But are they going to give you the actual material, or are they going to just throw mud in the water? And so you have the situation where instead of killing people, so they say, well, if they want to kill you, and I say, if the government wanted to kill you, James, you'd be dead in 30 minutes.
Right. But yeah, less.
They're not going to miss. And people
Less.
say they're threatening to
Yeah.
kill me. They're not going to threaten to kill you. They're just going to kill you. And so the whole
They're
idea
gonna
is the way
character
they do it
assassinate you.
is
Yeah.
if you get a story that's legitimate. For example, I had the Holloman Air Force Base story that Bob Eminger told me. It was May of 1971. It happened at 6 o'clock in the morning. There was 4 different cameras, one in the air. All this, there's 3 crafts, 2 moved away. It was the whole story from Close Encounters of the Third Kind, where Steven Spielberg got the idea, was from the Holloman Air Force Base thing. So he tells that story, and then suddenly Richard Doty comes forward and says, "Oh no, it wasn't 1971. It tells Linda how it was 1964, and the aliens got lost, and they're on the White Sands, and they were lost." And
Yeah.
and so then Linda and I start arguing. It's like, oh, 71, no, it's 64, no, it's 71. And that's what they do. They just throw mud in the water. They throw a second story in that sounds like the first story, and people are all bumping into each other.
So how do
You're
you
lying, I'm lying, you're lying.
how do you cut through that then?
You can't. You can't. That's the whole thing. Is they're controlling the story. So Jim Semivan said it's all under control. They've got this sort of stuff, and there, as Walker told us, you're never going to get the answer unless you have the mind of Einstein. You're never going to understand this stuff. So I believe that a lot of the stuff they've got, they don't have the answers. That's part of why this whole thing. They're trying to figure it out. Everybody's trying to get patents. So you have all the scientists. How many people sat on the Wilson leak document? That had the Wilson leak document for 10 years before I released it. Everybody's playing this little game. I'm gonna make money. I'm gonna get a patent. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do that. Everybody's playing this game, and it just sort of goes around in circles. That's why I said to this guy, I said, I'm tired of this. This is giving me a headache. It's going around in circles, and you can never confirm it. You can just tell stories. And that's when he said, well, it's real. And I go, what? It's real? And I stuck around, but they're going to protect this with piles and piles and piles of money and counter. They've done this since 1940s. The whole thing of covering the secrets. They know how to do this. They are not going to release the stuff they don't want to release if it's national security, high level stuff that, or even you, for example. So Burchett and these guys, they get conned into this stuff. So they go, we want a briefing. We want a briefing. So they of course they get set up and they say, okay, we'll give you a briefing. We're going to the skiff. And they go, bah, bah, and in they go, into the skiff, and they say, sign this non-disclosure agreement. We're going to give you a briefing. Bah, and they sign the non-disclosure agreement. And then they say, we have Blue Book, and there's nothing, no ETs and stuff like that. And then Burchett and these guys all come out, and they're all upset. It's like, hey, man, they didn't tell us anything. It was just stuff. And they said, what did they tell you? We can't tell you. We're under a non-disclosure agreement.
Yeah.
So basically they shut them down. These guys know what they're doing. They're not, unless you've got the level of security. Look at the Wilson leak. He's talking to Wilson. Wilson's talking to Eric Davis, and he's saying, he's answering this question, and then he hits the question. He goes, core secret. That's the deal. Core secrets. If you cannot even disclose the fact that the program exists, that's national security. You violated national security if you actually say there's even a program. This is this high level stuff, but it was brought into law. It is legal. They were given this authorization, and now, unless you find some way, you're not going to get it away from them. And the only way I say you can do it is you need these guys to quit whining and complaining and blaming the Illuminati and write a damn bill and get it through the House and get it signed by the Senate, and then the president has to sign it, and they change the law. The law is giving these guys permission to do it as of Ike. Beware of the military industrial complex. Nobody did. And as everybody's mother has told them once in their lifetime, you've made your bed, now lie in it. You've given them the permission and the power to do this. And now we're whining and complaining because we've given them permission and nobody's doing anything to change it except blaming everybody. The dog ate the homework, the mother-in-law, and all this nonsense. And it's the government. Burchett and Luna and all these people in the House are the government. They can change the law anytime they want.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to go back because we had mentioned Ron a few times during this talk, and you mentioned that he runs obfuscation. So is that like an official thing? Is he acting on his own, or is that something that's
Well, that's how I said the number one question in ufology is not what are UFOs, it's what the hell's Ron Pandolfi doing? I have no idea what he's doing. I mean, he mentioned the word obfuscation. So, but then he said, this rumor came out. He may have been part of the rumor that he retired, like he was a loon crook himself, and they made him retire, whatever. And now he's working on drones and with the Kashmir Foundation and stuff like that. He's not really involved, but you can send Ron. I tell people, if you want to talk to Ron Pandolfi, send him an email. He will reply within a couple of minutes. I remember back in the 1990s, I was playing the game then. I was like, I'm going to convince these guys. I'm going to fight with these guys. I was fighting with James Oberg from NASA. So I go to James Oberg and I'm fighting him on something, and I spent hours and write him this reply, and he'd have like 30 seconds later. This is when the internet first came out. It was just like a chat board, and it came back. Boom, he answered, and then I would spend 2 hours writing another answer, and he'd answer in 30 seconds. And then finally I said, "Hey James, do you have a job? Like, what the hell are you doing? I mean, you're on the internet all day long. You can email him 3 o'clock in the morning. He'll answer you within 30 seconds. Ron's the same thing. Anybody who wants to talk to Ron Pandolfi, he will answer you. And he said part of his job is to deal with the loons. So he has some sort of official role. Dan Smith, when he was in Congress, when he was talking to his congressional aide, and Ron was there, he said, I just want to let you know that you're dealing with very respected people and they know what they're doing, or something like that. Very reliable people and they know what they're doing. So there is some sort of role. Now, I'm not sure whether he's official or not.
Okay.
If he's retired, it doesn't mean anything. Whatever he says doesn't mean anything, because he can say
Yeah.
whatever he wants. But if he's official, if he has some government role, then this is serious. Whatever Ron Pandolfi is saying is serious, because he's speaking on behalf of the government.
So there, Stephen Greer tells a story about how a high-level CIA scientist offered him, correct, it offered him protection.
Yeah.
Stephen Greer declined in 96, and then Sherry Adamak passed, and who's that, the former director of the CIA?
No, the congressman, Schiff.
No, the congressman too. Congressman, yeah, him, Schiff also, but William Colby, right? There was a number of people that just, so then Stephen Greer said he went back to that high level CIA scientist, who's Ron, and took up his offer on protection, right? So if somebody came after him and from the intelligence services, that this person's high level CIA scientist would take care of that, right? So what's going on there?
Well, I know we asked Ron in one conversation. He was standing in the background. His wife was running a thing on portals on the internet on a go-to conference or whatever. And I remember Sid Goldberg from Gaia asked the question. He said, "Does Ron vet all Stephen Greer's material?" And then you hear Ron in the background goes, "What material?" And then Goldberg doesn't fall for it. He says, "Does Ron Pandolfi vet everything that Stephen Greer's material?" And then there's this dead silence. And then someone says, "I think you just got your answer." But yeah, they had the contact. But again, it's this whole idea is, if they want Stephen Greer dead, he's dead. They want him to do what he's doing, because he's
Correct.
just all this stuff. Nobody knows what's going on. That's what they want. They want everybody off balance, that nobody knows. Everybody's fighting with each other. The UFO community is at odds with each other. That's what they want. They don't want you looking where you're actually going to find something. They just throw people off. That's how they keep the cover up going. And whether Ron's job is official or not, I think it's very easy to keep it covered up. That people are so busy with the Illuminati and the conspiracy theories and all this kind of stuff, that they just sort of distracted from what's really going on. What's really going on is this is legal. This is actually legal, and if they want to change it, they can change it anytime they want.
So, I mean, do you think that is part of the obfuscation that Stephen Greer is saying this is illegal? It's a rogue program. There's no oversight, and it's a controlled opposition in that messaging, and that's why Ron is assisting Stephen Greer in that capacity.
Well, Stephen Greer's version, I think, comes from this whole idea that comes from Dick D'Amato, when he's told that there's a group. That's what Dick D'Amato told Jesse Marcel in the conference room below the Capitol. He said, "I just want to let you know this is real." He's tapping the Majestic book that was written by Whitley Strieber. "Yeah, I want you to know this is real." And he said, "Well, if it's real, when are you going to release it?" He said, "It was up to me. I would release it. I'm just here to find out what the security's costing." He was hired by the Senate Appropriations Committee, because the head of the Senate Appropriations Committee in 1989, when this happened, when Lazar came forward, said, "Hey, are we doing UFOs at Area 51? And all the people on the committee said, "I don't know, sir." And he said, "Well, if we're doing UFOs at Area 51, we're paying for this damn thing. We don't know what's going on." And that's why they send Dick D'Amato. And he talked to this high official that George Knapp talks about. He talked to Stephen Greer. He talked to all these people. And that's when he said there's this unelected group that runs it. And that's true. but they're given the official. It's the same as if you're talking people in the Secretary of Defense or head of state or whatever, they're not elected either. They're appointed. So yeah, they're working under people, and they're doing their thing. But it's still it comes down to Stephen Greer saying that this is illegal. I would disagree with him. I would say yeah, it is legal. That this is actually written in there, and he's trying to change it with force. In fact, the only people that can write law is Congress. They write the laws and the rules and regulations, and these people were given authorization to have the material to run this kind of stuff because you need it in a contract world that you're contracting out and trying to get the answers. And yeah, these people are unelected, but they are appointed and they are given the authorization to have this kind of stuff. And now we're sort of thinking that if we yell and scream loud enough that suddenly everybody's going to give up the $900 billion budget, they're not going to. You've got to change the law. That's the only way you can do this. I maintain this has always been legal. It's always been part of the thing where you need these answers, that these contractors were given this stuff. Even when you see the stuff with DeLong, where they were brought in there, and they basically, when you hear the discussions he had in the skiff, these guys think they're saving the world just like everybody else, and they have this sort of program, and they have some sympathy for maybe we should acclimatize people so that they're ready when this thing breaks or whatever. But basically they think they're saving the world. They're making this technology, and I pointed out Tim Taylor, his one invention was millions of dollars, and he's got 40 some patents that he got from the beings or whatever, intelligence, whatever it is. And that's what you see is a lot of people aren't going to give it up. If you're a scientist in behind the scenes, you're not going to give it up until you get a patent, because these patents, if you got the biological material and you got the patent on this biological material, I mean, this is worth huge money. In the United States, there's only three rules. Number one is money. Number two is money. And number three is money. And it's a power situation where whoever's got the power is not going to give it up unless you change the law. And right now, you're in a situation where as long as until you got one party that runs the White House, the Congress, and the Senate, and they're all on UFO disclosure, you're not going to get UFO disclosure because it only takes one guy to block the bill. Turner decided, I'm blocking the bill. He blocked the bill. They blocked the Ukraine bill. They blocked the bill at the border. In the Congress now, one guy can block a bill. And that's the whole deal is nothing's getting done. You've got Congress. They've been there for 2 years, the last 2 years. They can't name a post office, and they can't get anything done. And yet what we do is we turn around and blame everybody else for what's going on, when in fact you're making $179,000 a year. You were elected by your people. What the hell are you doing? If you want disclosure, you know how to get it. And that's the bottom line to the whole thing.
So what do you think is going on with this whole situation we're in? That we have um people from within the program trying to come forward and get some of this out there, and there again the Congress people that are and the representatives that are trying to write the language. Where do you see this going?
Nowhere. You're like right now, you got this other new Senate bill. Like, why are you wasting your time writing another bill for the next appropriations, defense appropriations? It's going to get blocked in the House. Turner's going to block it again. You can block the bill. He's going to say, no, it's not coming through. And they're going to have the vote, and it's going down, and then you're going to go back. It's like, you can write all the bills you want. You have to understand how the government works, and you got to get everybody on the same page. And as long as you have Turner and Rogers and Johnson, who are going to block the bill, you can write all the bills you want. Nothing's going to happen. It's going around in circles, and that's fine with the government, the black ops, whoever they are, because that's what they want. They things are protected. They get to continue to do what they want, and the technology. Because the way you got to realize how this technology game was played. I mean, technology top secret, didn't even get established till after World War II. All the secrecy stuff started in the World War II, and they made 200 different inventions in World War II. One was atomic bomb, proximity fuse. Eric Walker was a co-developer of the homing torpedo, and they, all this sort of stuff, nylon, synthetic rubber, all these different technologies that were built. And so the way it works is that most of the research money goes into the military. It goes in from the government, or the government puts out this research stuff. So they put in the research money, and then at end of World War II, they said, holy cow, this worked pretty good. Because what they used to do, instead of sending scientists to war, they would Sarbacher called dollar a year men. So they bring these people in for $1 a year, and these guys would work on military inventions. And they said, well, this works pretty good. So then they started to develop it. And the example I think they like to point out is the one with the GPS. So GPS was a military invention. And so they work on it and they develop it for the military. And then when they go to stage 2 and they have a better thing, then they release stage 1 to the public. And they say, this is how it works. You get it after we've developed it. So they control all this kind of stuff, all the inventions, all the stuff, all the money's going to them, and it funnels down. So they have this system that they think works. And that's why Walker said, like, why should we change? And nobody's answered that question. Why should we change the rules and regulations to satisfy your curiosity? Admit it. You're just curious. He's absolutely 100% right. The people in the UFO community, that's all they want. They're curious. They want to know. And they go, we don't care. You do not have a need to know. You don't have clearance. We don't care if you're curious. And they're not going to give up this whole game that they're playing and the money and the inventions and the military and the weapons and stuff because people are curious. They don't care. And that's the bottom line is people don't really have a really good reason why this should be made public.
And I mean, what do you make of the idea? Grush said, we've basically been in this Cold War for decades, trying to see who can reverse engineer the technology faster.
What Walker said. What did Walker say? What's the big deal? It's been 40 years. We haven't blown up the world yet. It's like we got it under control. Just shut up. We're not listening to you. We don't care. It's you can make all these stories you want. We're winning. They think they're actually making progress, or even if they're not making progress, they don't want to put their cards because it's a game of we have this idea. We need to know because we're taxpayers. So you put your cards on the table. So you put your cards on the table, and Putin goes, "Oh, thanks. That's 20% of the cards I needed," and they've got it because they're working on it as well. The Chinese are working on it. Everybody's scrambling to get this technology, and nobody's going to put their cards on the table to give it to the other side because that's the way the military works. It's like you got all these enemies. You got Russia and China and the Mexicans and used to be Vietnam, but they're good guys now because they build Nike runners. And we used to be Japan, but now they build cars, so they're good guys now. And it's this world of you need an enemy, and that's how you get the money. If there's no enemy, there's no money. And that's what Danny Sheehan points out. This thing of 1992 when the Iron Curtain fell, and then Cheney and all these guys had this thing about full spectrum dominance. This gives us our opportunity to have full spectrum dominance, that 5% of the world is going to control 40% of the natural resources. We're going to control the world. And that's the way they look at the whole thing is we're in charge. We're the good guys, and we're going to control this. And anybody gets in their way, they're just going to run over you, or not run over you now, because what Jim Simian told Tom Bledsoe, he said, if we wanted you dead, you'd be dead 10 years ago. We don't do that anymore. What they do is they do this obfuscation thing. Is especially the UFO community is so easy. You just put a story in the UFO community. It's total nonsense, and people start scrambling, and everybody's going in different directions, and they put another story in and put another story in, and they just throw mud in the water. And nobody. It's like me when it came to the portal thing. I worked on portals. I wrote a couple of books on portals, and it was just at the end. It was just like, I don't know who to believe. It's like, how do you confirm any of this stuff? It's sort of swirling around, and you just after a while you just go. Even now, I go, I give up. I'm scanning my files, and the disclosure stuff, I hate it. That's why I didn't want to do the books. I just hated this stuff. I want to do the consciousness book because I think that's where the answer is. And this disclosure thing, it just goes around in circles and around in circles. And the way I'm looking at this, like book 5, is this thing like people don't realize they keep doing this again. They went to Emmenegger, they went to Disney, they went to Tom DeLonge, they went to Bill Moore. They did the MJ12, the New Majestic 12 documents, released 3,700 pages of documents. They're doing this over and over again. And so suddenly I get involved in one of these things. And it's like, oh my God, they're doing it again. So I wanted to sort of tell the story. It's like I'm on the inside, and it's like, come on, man. Think I'm stupid? I know what's going on here. And it's like, let's see what they do, And it's like the guys, the same thing. We're here. It's like when they came to Moore, they said, we're here from the US government. We're here to help you. It's like, the only time in the world anybody would ever believe the government's here to help us. We're here. We're the government. We're going to help you. We've chosen you, James. We're going to choose you to bring the message to the world. They go, oh my God, I'm so important. And they got people running all over the place, and everybody thinks, and people start to fight because they figure they've got the answer. And that's what I've heard now. There's you have Knapp with his group, him and Corbell. And once they start putting these big stories, people start contacting them. That's how it works. You'd say, well, put this story out, but you got to weed out, is this story real? Or is this disinformation that somebody's trying to put out, information is trying to put out? There's a story about one of the newspapers, Wall Street Journal or New York Times, I've heard, has a thing. Elizondo has his group. You have all these groups, and they're being fed material. And then there's this other group that suddenly appeared, and I'm telling you, there was this one thing. I can just give you a hint as to, and it's sort of falling apart. I don't know if it's going to go forward, but one time the colonel guy comes forward, and Nell comes forward, and then someone says, "Hey, what these guys is the colonel? Where are the generals?" I know where the generals are. It's like, holy shit! I saw some of the people that were rumored in this new group. It's like, holy, oh my god! If these guys get any of these guys on the record, it's going to be like, wow. And so I said, wow. That's why I decided to do the book, because suddenly there was another book, and I went, oh, I got sucked back into this disclosure nonsense.
What generals are you talking about?
Well, this is the thing. I can't say. I mean, I'm guessing, because there's going to be a non-disclosure agreement, and I'm just an
Are you
advisor.
talking about generals that are supposed to be coming forward?
Generals that there's there's all these initiatives that there's people out there who want the story out, and they want this thing. And so there's all these different groups. I heard about all these different groups, and as I said, I was offered this before, and this is the idea of the aviary, because I was one of the first people to put the aviary idea out, and I was contacted, and it was like, well, Ron Pandolfi wanted this documentary done on the aviary. And then it was going to be Hollywood, and I said, I'm not going to sit in front of a camera. I don't do that. No, I'll research whatever, and that's what I'm doing now. So then there was this other offer, and I can't say much about it, but there's this other offer, and I'm just an advisor. So I'm telling this guy, who's this guy? Who's this guy? Watch out for this. This is what they do, whatever. Because I know how this game's played. I was with Bill Moore when this was dropped with Bill Moore. I was friends with Bill Moore, and I've seen this game over and over, and it's like they're still playing the game, and it's whatever they're doing. And I think a lot of it's disinformation, because one of the things that they put out was the evil alien thing. And I go, oh, yeah, it's like, oh shit, this
So
is disinformation.
what do you ever think happened with the General McCaslin thing? I mean, he's not part of that group, or this is another group of
I don't
generals?
know who's in the group. I just know that there's this claim that there's this high level thing. And McCaslin may. I mean, there was efforts to try to get the McCaslin and Kerry and these guys. They
Right,
were important.
right.
They were important, because
Of course.
that's where I say to Mellon. Like Mellon says, there's no official program. There's no leaking program. And that's like bull. There's no leaking program.
Right.
McCaslin was operational when he was with DeLong. So
Yeah.
was Kerry. Kerry got demoted because he got in Russia. He got nailed with these Russian women, and he got drunk, and he was demoted. Got 1 star taken off by Obama, and that's when he went to DeLong. But he was still operational. He was still at Space Command, and Robert Weiss was operational. So that's official. That's coming from somebody inside the government. That's not, because if you get people like, say, Jim Semivan or Kit Green, well, they're not really government people. They're sort of retired, and they can sort of say what they want. You can't really say this is somebody inside the Black Ops. But when you get McCaslin and stuff like that, then these guys are operational.
And
This
there's the story that, Tom DeLonge's at the airport, and a general, McCaslin,
yeah.
allegedly said to him, it was the Cold War, and we found a
War.
life form.
Yeah. And that's what I point out in book 3. That's one of the important things I point out. I keep pointing out, and nobody listens, is that Tom DeLonge did not put this group together. People always say, oh, Tom DeLonge is smart. Tom
Yeah.
DeLonge's a smart guy. And he put this thing. No, what happened was Tom DeLonge had contact with a guy whose relative worked at Lockheed Skunk Works. And this is the guy that said, don't get in a car. If they tell you to get in a car, don't get in a car, and stuff like that. And he was all scared, because he had the Greer had given him those videos, and he was
The
hiding them under the
disclosure,
bed.
yeah.
And then he started having the phone interruptions, and he moved 3 times and changed phones, and he was having that stuff, and he thought the government was out to get him. And so then he gets the offer. He got an offer. He did not make the offer. He got the offer to speak at Lockheed Skunk Works at a barbecue outside the facility where the families could meet. They couldn't go in the facilities, but they're having this barbecue. Would you like to introduce the president of Lockheed Skunk Works? Yeah, I'd love to do that with the guy. So he was set up, and they took him, and then he talked to the guy, and he said, I got this thing. Yeah, come on out. And they take him into a skiff. He's a civilian, and they take him into a skiff, and he's got the head scientist, and he's got Weiss and whoever the third guy is. And they're saying, we don't talk about the stuff. It doesn't exist and stuff like that. And why were you doing the website? He used to have Strange Times. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And it was like the National Enquirer times 10. It was
Yeah,
like, just
conspiracy. Yeah.
crazy. stories in the world. And they say, what's with the conspiracy stuff? They're saying to him, what's with, and they're checking him out. It's like, is this guy going to follow the rules? Like he likes this kind of conspiracy stuff. So maybe we can give him some of this stuff and to put out. And that's when he said, you guys can't get the message out. And this is true. If you're the government, it's the same as the contract giving the equipment to the facilities. If you're the government, you can't make a movie. So you need people to make movies for you. The government doesn't make movies. They're the black ops people. So they hire these Disney, Emmenegger, all these people to get out messages that they want getting out. And the whole thing was great advertising. That did the UFO cover up live, did the Bob Emmenegger thing. It was always Linda Howe said it was a front company for the CIA. So they're using these operationals. And so Tom DeLonge says, you can't get it out. You can't get the message out. I can get the message out. And then the guy said, hey, this may actually work. And then they sent him to the Pentagon City. That's where Leslie Kean met with Elizondo. He went to Pentagon City, and these guys are sitting at the table, and they say things like this do not happen at the White House. They do not happen on the Hill. They happen when people like this decide to move the football down the field. And then they send him to NASA, and then they went to Ames. Then he went to met the general at the airport and stuff like that. And he was moved around, and he was given all these people. The only person he actually contacted was John Podesta. Other than that, he was given all these people. And it's the same idea. We're here from the government, James, and we're here to help you. It's like, really? Me? Oh, wow. I'll help you. And then start feeding them stuff. And that you got to be very careful when that happens. Is if somebody comes to me, the first question I say is, why are you not in jail? If you're going to leak to me classified material, and the Canadians said 1950, this is the highest level secret in the United States. If you're going to leak the highest level secret in the United States, you're not loyal. Why should I trust you? Why are you not in jail?
So what do you think that this group of individuals that were assisting Tom DeLonge, what do you think they're doing? What do you think their end game is?
They still may be part of it. They still may be part. They had to go for cover because the cover was blown.
No. But why do you think that they participated in that initiative?
Well, because he could get the message out. This is the whole idea. Tom DeLonge said, I can get your message out. I've got all these people on Facebook and
Yeah, but why
Instagram.
would somebody like McCaslin or Rice or anybody, why would they want to, or Kerry or
Well,
any of them?
it's not 100% disclosure. They're releasing this stuff the way they want it released. They realize you got to release this kind of stuff, but you control the release. That's the whole thing. If you're a beggar on the street, if you're panhandling on the street, you don't confront. I don't confront you face to face. I walk beside you. Hey, James, how's your day? Oh, by the way, James, you got any money for food? And that's what they do. They even Chase Brandon. Chase Brandon wrote the book,
Right,
Christos
right.
Conundrum, in 2012 about how the CIA dealt with the Roswell crash. And he said, if you want a good read, read the book. If you want to learn something, read between the lines. And Kit Green has said the same thing. Read between the lines. So they tell this story. And that's why I say you got to stop with the new story, the new video, whatever, and listen to what guys like Elizondo, what Jim Semivan, Ron Pandolfi, you got to listen very carefully to them. And when Walker said this thing about why should we change the rules and regulations to satisfy your curiosity? That was years later when I suddenly went, oh, that's what he's talking about. Or when he said, let me ask you a question. What do you know about ESP? And then the guy who was interviewing from Great Britain said, oh, I don't really know. And he said, look, unless you understand about ESP and how it works, you will not be taken into the control group. Very few people understand how it works. That was 1990, talking about this psychic component to the whole thing that the Canadians, and I didn't realize that until the download experience in 2012, when suddenly the Canadian thing, mental phenomena is involved. Eric Walker saying, what do you know about ESP? And then Jan Hartson goes to Ben Rich, who was giving the lecture to the engineering alumni at UCLA in 1993, 2 years after Walker. And he says to Ben, Ben, I need to know, how did they get here? I had an experience when I was a kid. I need to know, how did they get here? How's the propulsion system work? And he turns around and he says to him, let me ask you a question. What do you know about ESP? And then Jan Hartson says, it means everything is in time and space is connected. And he said, that's how it works. Get this car and drives off. And that when you get these three things come together, that's why I say you got to listen very carefully to what these guys are saying, that they are giving material out. But the classified stuff is going to be kept there. But you've got to move the ball down the field in terms of what people know. So that's the whole 99 or $64,000 question is, what are they actually doing? What's this proposal? Why are these generals coming forward? Why are they? It's the question. Why are you not in jail? Why are you? Who's authorizing you? Who's allowing you to talk? Who are you working for? Those are the kind of questions that I always try to figure out. And the last one interested me, but it looked like it was going to go. I mean, it was like almost like the Bill Moore thing: fly across the country, look at a document, all this kind of stuff. And it's like, this is, I said, like, it doesn't matter what happens now. I mean, the game's over. We can actually prove that the first part of the story happened. And then you see that kind of stuff. And it's the whole idea is you're never going to know exactly what's going on, but do you want to play the game? And I said, okay, I'll be the advisor. I'll sit on the sidelines here and see what's happened. And now it seems to have sort of fallen apart. But there's all these claims. I mean, Elizondo, this is like I say to the thing with Elizondo. Elizondo will say, he'll be talking, he'll say, oh, I can't say that, I'll violate security. And then you go, so who's listening, Elizondo? Like there's somebody listening to him. I mean, there's somebody above Elizondo who's screening what he's saying. He realizes there's this black ops thing, and you've got this fine line, and you can't step over the line, and you're sort of moving it along, and that's where we're going. So we know a lot more than we did in the 1970s when I started. Absolutely, in terms of how this thing works and the psychic component and all this kind of stuff. So it's a gradual process that they know they can't keep it under wraps, but they want to build the weapons. That's all it is about for these guys. That's why they went to Skinwalker Ranch. They did not go for UFOs. I believe they went for the manifestations and the apports and the cattle mutilations and the voices in people's heads and stuff like that. That's what they were interested in. It's a technology game to them, and it's the old deal is you don't have a need to know about this element of the program in terms of how much have they developed. I lots of times I don't think they've developed very much at all. I think that they're still in that's the whole core story. If you know the core story, Jacques Vallée, Kit Green, and
Hal, yeah,
uh, who was the third?
Hal,
Vallée, Jacques Vallée.
yeah.
And they sit in the Denny's restaurant and they say, what do we know for sure? And you got to remember, these are like, again, this is these high level guys that should know what's going on. What do we know for sure? And they said, we are being interacted by some sort of intelligence. We have hardware, and we're not doing very well back engineering. That's the core story. So that's the whole thing. And it's like we think, oh, they've got this thing all figured out. There's no way they got it all figured. They may have some elements of the thing.
Hey, Grant, are you there?
Are you there?
Yeah, I got you now. I got you now. You
Yeah.
dropped out for like
Yeah.
2 seconds.
Yeah, so I think there's an element like Jim Semivan says. I don't think, and that's important. Jim Semivan knows a little bit more than you and I. And Jim Semivan says, I don't think in my lifetime I'll ever fully understand what's going on, or they'll have an answer to it. That's very serious stuff. And for people who think that they've got it all figured out, that contradicts that. And that's why I say listen to these very high level guys, but listen carefully to what they're saying. And as Chase Brandon said, and as Kit Green says, read between the lines. There's things that they say that you go, what? What did he just say? And that's why I say that most important interview is that Lakatsky interview, where he identifies the fact that there was a senator in the room when he talked about the crash saucer and getting inside the crash saucer. That means the senators know, some senators know, the Gang of Eight type people, and the fact that there's a mental phenomena, that there are the phenomena is doing this Men in Black thing, and he revealed all sorts of stuff. If you listen very carefully to what he said, it was
Well,
spectacular.
okay, so yeah, and it's a great one. I think
Oh, and
everybody
the other
should.
one other thing I should point that he said when he was asked about what was inside the craft, and he said, "I can't. I have to." He says, "I've got to write it up and get it reviewed and get it approved, maybe down the road." And then he said, but then he says, and Corbell is talking over him, and then he says, "If you knew the answer to that, the rest of it would seem primitive." He's talking about the inside of the craft. If
Yeah.
you knew that, the rest of it would seem primitive. What is he talking about? Those are the kind of things that forget about the videos and the sightings and stuff like that. Listen very carefully to what these guys say. In some ways, they are telling you a little bit what's going on. And the end of the result is that we haven't got a clue that the universe is. I always say it's going to be way less physical than you think it is. It's going to be way more spiritual than you think it is. And it's going to be 1,000 times more complex than people think. The more I look at it, the more complex it looks. It's like everything else in nature. The more you look at an amoeba or something, it gets more complex, and you realize it's going to do this and that, and stuff like that. And that's how the world develops. And we learn the magnificence of the universe, that it's not a simple nuts and bolts world. And that's what the phenomena is doing. Or if you take the thing with Mike Clelland, he had the thing where you say, what's the phenomena doing? So Mike Clelland tells a story, and he says, I'm his spokesman, tell the story now. So Mike Clelland has the regression with Yvonne Smith. And he says, during the regression, he says, ask me what's with the owls? Why am I obsessed with owls? And so he has his thing where he's out of his body and he goes into the craft and stuff. And the beings tell him it's your time. You got to write this book and all this kind of stuff. And then he's all mad. Oh, I volunteered for this, and he's all mad. And then he quietens down. And then she says, "So, Mike, what's with the owls? Why are you obsessed with owls?" And then he goes from talking, whispering in his regression. He starts channeling. And he says, "The owls are not important. The owls don't mean anything. The owls are just a symbol. The owls are a symbol that's on a door. It's the door that's important. You're in this little hallway, and you open the door, and on the other side is this vast unexplored universe." And that's what the phenomenon is doing. It's taking you from one door to the next door. You see this UFO. What's this UFO doing on the door? What's going on? Hey, I wonder what the door. Open the door. Oh, and it just takes you from one door to the next, and it's leading us with these breadcrumbs down the road. And the government, I think, has learned that, and they're doing in some small way the same sort of thing. It's just breadcrumbs leading us down the road, explaining what's going on. But the phenomena is controlling this. The whole game is controlled by the phenomena. That's what Jim Semivan said. Who's running the show? He said they are.
Right. And we're getting towards the end of our time here, Grant. So I know you have what, at least two more books coming out, but more than that. So just what do you got up and coming, Grant?
Well, as I said to you, I'm basically moving to a high end city to live in, and I'm going to have to basically spend some time trying to figure out how I'm going to survive. So I'm getting out. I'm scanning all my files. I'm putting them on the internet. I put it up. We have to find another way to do it because the whole OneDrive crashed once everybody started going on there. But I've got my 50 years of research, 12 boxes. I'm on the last box now. I'm scanning all my documents, and all my documents are going to be nothing. I'm not even reading them. So anybody who's had some confidential conversation with me, you might want to get ready to duck because it's all going to be on the internet. And that was because the university wouldn't take it. I was shocked. I mean, it's like, I couldn't believe it. It's like, and yet I realized that they would control it. So I'm doing that. I've got three more books that are finished. Eventually, I'm not really that. The one I'm pretty interested in. I'm giving this lecture on the cruise, a number of lectures on the cruise ship about phenomena and stuff that interests me, the music stuff which interests me. But other than that, I'm not really doing that much. I'm very depressed, and I'm trying to stay out of the disclosure thing. I keep getting dragged back in, but I'm more
Yeah.
interested in the consciousness, the sort of the psychic aspect of this thing, and what's really going on. What's really going on is the nature of reality. That reality is not the way you think it is. It works different than the way you think it does, and that's what the phenomenon is telling us. It's giving us these little hints. Go this direction, and eventually we'll figure it out. But like Jim Semivan, I don't think I'll ever see the end to it. So I just sort of enjoy the ride, and that I got to play the game. And I call it the Super Bowl. You and I got to play in the biggest game of all times. If you understand it, what's really going on here, you realize this is the Super Bowl of all stories. And it is not simple. It is very complex. And it gives us the idea, why did we come in the world? What the question that we're going to be asked, how did it work out? That we planned the whole thing when we leave the world, and we are to figure out what are we here to do, and are we doing it? That's what I'm still trying to figure out, is what am I here to do, and when am I doing it? And hopefully I have a number of years to go, but after 50 years, I'm kind of worn out with some of this stuff.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. I'm not in it quite as long as you, but I understand what you mean.
Yeah.
Uh, and do you have any parting words for the audience?
My parting words are always the same. Realize that if reincarnation is a fact, which it is, or that we may be living all our lives at the same time, there's no time, no space, this really weird idea of the world, that you are in charge of your life, that this is not random, very, very little is random. And you have a role, and we got to figure out why are we here, and are we doing what we're supposed to be here to doing. And once you get on the path, you get the synchronicities, and it starts to unfold, and you just play this Shakespearean thing, but realize that you are not the puppet on the stage. Because you played King Henry VIII in grade 12 high school play does not mean you're not King Henry VIII. You are an etheric spirit type thing that is playing a physical role, and you're here to do something, and go with that.
Well, thanks for that, Grant, and I'll speak to you again soon. Take care.
Beautiful. Thanks for your interest.